Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel and to a second Paralives speed build. I'm very excited to explore this game even more, and as I was finishing editing this video, my computer decided to blip. So it's been a couple of weeks actually since I've built this build, so I'm very glad that I scripted this video, otherwise I would have forgotten many different inspiration points for it. But speaking of inspiration, this is a mid-century modern home inspired by Farnley Hay in West Yorkshire. I came across this home on the Modern House, and yeah, just fell in love with it. I love builds like this. It's originally designed by the architect Peter Womersley in 1954. And the build was originally supposed to have 4 bedrooms, but you'll see a little later on my struggles to make this second floor cooperate. So we ended up with a generous 3-bedroom home instead. So mid-century modern is actually one of my favorite design movements. I've tried to reflect that through the clean lines of the build and the use of natural wood and leather throughout the interiors. And the build itself has a cantilever floor, which takes in amazing hilltop views. It's the reason why I chose this plot for this house. And yeah, it's just a series of boxes more than anything, and very much enjoyed how it came out. Now, ignore the roofing. I was experimenting with different flat pieces and it wasn't really working in my favor, to be honest. Just adjusting it with the advanced transform tool and yeah, trying to create some different heights and thicknesses. And I don't think it looks terrible right now. I'd used an extended shelf there in these extension parts, but I just didn't like the texture on it. It looked too stretched. And as I mentioned a little later on, this floor doesn't even exist. So I'm doing all this detailing for nothing. But I think, yeah, right here it doesn't look terrible. But I did want to just refine it over time. Once I loaded back into the game, I originally built this over 2.5 days. Yeah, when I reloaded, I just didn't like the look of the roof, so I did tune it up. So to the exterior palette, we're opting for dark wood slats, and I'm doing that in just key areas of the build and creating some accent walls here and there, and finally figured out how to segment the walls and the wallpaper with the illusion wall. And to pair with the dark wood slats, we're going to introduce stones and brick, which is very indicative of mid-century modern style. And in doing so, we're also going to introduce the minimal glass pane windows, which is going to invite the outside in, which is a very big proponent of mid-century modern architecture. And here I'm just kind of playing around with the palette. I wanted to go for something neutral but soft, nothing too stark. I think that rich wood, brown wood, was enough as an accent for this build. And on this section at the back, decided to opt for a soft beige brick color. I was actually kind of impressed with the customization. I mean, we have the color wheel, so the possibilities really are endless for customization in this game. And then here we are, adding some floor to ceiling windows on this lovely cantilever section. This area is where a kind of refined fancy living room is going to be. There's going to be no television in here, and the paras can take in the gorgeous views, but I think it really came out very nicely. And in this section, I wanted to use the transform tool. I've actually used the advanced transform tool a lot throughout this build. Just wanted to push myself, push the build mode, and sometimes it was to my disadvantage because when I would load back into the game, all these painstaking hours I spent adding columns to areas just disappeared, or they just floated into the stratosphere of the map. So that was kind of frustrating. But I did just want to create some bespoke architectural details. Given that this is a build of many basic boxes, I think it's nice really to add that extra care and attention to your builds. But I did, yeah, I just wanted to create some extra vantage points to these wall to ceiling windows, and by doing that I've introduced columns and just manipulated the size. I think I even put this kind of little skinny column at the edge as a bit of an overhang, just to make it seem like that's been kind of caged in, so to speak. But I also experimented with wall thicknesses as well. I don't think they're quite optimized just yet for the game because it creates kind of a janky corner on the wall. We do actually resolve the clipping a little later by just tweaking the length of the window, but I do like that as a feature because it definitely adds some more realism to builds. Just mirroring the windows downstairs. This part will be where a dining room is actually. So wanted to take in the views, as many of the views as possible. And yeah, just adding another column manipulated with the transform tool to create a kind of bottom sill for the window. I think it turned out quite nice actually. It doesn't look like much, but I was happy with how this side of the build came out. And here I am just, yeah, as I mentioned, experimented with the wall thickness. You can see there it's clipping through. So I was thinking, how do I fix it? And then realized all you needed to do was just drag the window slightly. So the original build that I've drawn inspiration from does have colorful accents, which I wanted to reflect in my build. So I ended up using an object I found in the miscellaneous roofing category, recoloring it and using the transform tool to manipulate it into shape. And you can see it's quite a common decorative detail on mid-century modern homes. I've also introduced shells, which I rotated and used the eyedropper trick to color it in stone. If you don't know how to do that, you just hold Shift on your keyboard when you're recoloring objects from walls. It just works an absolute charm. And yeah, I just decided to go up for a stone shade. I couldn't use the one that was on the wall because it stretched a bit too much, so I opted for this one instead. I think it looked quite nice. But yeah, with that tool, the possibilities truly are endless for customization. And very much enjoyed that I managed to make this look as realistic as possible, given that it's not something I usually would do on my build. I didn't get more lovely windows to the rear of the build. I wanted to create a double-heighted window moment for impact on this back wall. So yeah, just lots of glass everywhere. And I was kind of getting some glitching here, as you can see. It was very tricky to place down an excessive amount of windows, but I managed to figure out at the end by just placing it on a different wall. And yeah, you'll see this a lot. I'm tweaking with the roofs using the transform tool. This is where I use my Sims 4 knowledge to separate the roof pieces for a more seamless finish. I noticed it was kind of glitching into the wall and just wanted to avoid that clipping really. So I am much more happy with it now. I think it looks a lot better. Just creating custom shapes really more than anything. But yeah, I think it turned out quite nicely. You can see there I was kind of just messing around with the width of it. The front view was really pivotal to the build, so I wanted to create something that felt private. So there's not many windows in the side. And yeah, just something very minimal, simple, and reflected those tiny slat windows next to the doorway, which I thought looked really nice. And yeah, you can ignore the work I'm doing on that top floor, considering it no longer exists anymore. But it's nice to actually show the process of building and mistakes. And I mean, I don't know if it was my mistake. It was more the game's mistake that I couldn't get the roofing to work. But it's nice for everyone to see this build in different stages. You can just see that the terrain is slightly janky. So I had to kind of lift the windows up slightly to make sure they didn't sink too much into the floor, and reflecting the colorful detail that we did on the side using the advanced transform tool next to the doorway. And I ended up using an object from the debug catalog to add more architectural details. And you can access this via Steam mod, which I downloaded from Zerbu. And it basically opens up the build mode catalog to all the unusable objects found throughout the world. So here I ended up using a shop counter with a wooden slat detail, recoloring it, and then using the transform tool. So it sat flush to the exterior wall. It was very painstaking, but I'm very happy with the outcome. Found this very appropriate mosaic brick flooring for the exterior pathway, but in creating a dividing wall, it also left some jagged edges, which is, I imagine, to do with the terrain not being flush. So I ended up disguising that with a half wall instead and recoloring it. Used my trick as well of adding a shelf on the top just to disguise it a little later on. Introducing the first phase of landscaping. So I've used a mix of different size brushes, some with red accents just for a pop of color, and a few rocks sunk into the ground. I opted for this kind of charcoaly shade. I just thought it worked with the surrounding color palette. This is where the advanced transform tool really came in handy, so I could just manipulate all the different sizes and heights, etc. Here, just cleaning up the edge of that half wall. I hope in a patch that will be patched in so we don't have to do this manually. But yeah, I just use a shelf and the transform tool just to neaten up the edges so it looks a little bit better. We're back to the landscaping. Here I introduced a few more plants to fill out the front pathway, and I brought in some lovely delicate flowers and also a few trees. And yeah, I just wanted to make it look as lush as possible without overdoing things. I really enjoyed landscaping in this game, actually. It felt very intuitive. Really loved adding all those extra realistic details, sinking in stones and rocks and creating different heights for the plants. And yeah, and I love as well that things don't just zing up from the terrain if it's slightly curved or not. So it felt really organic. And here, just choosing an appropriate tree for the area. Like I said, I wanted to create a very kind of private front to this house. So definitely wanted to shroud it in landscaping and make it feel very cozy and quiet, I guess you could say. And love this grass, actually. I was kind of testing a few and ended up going for this light grass for a bit of realism to the lot and carried that through the landscaping bit by bit, just by eye, really. There's no rhyme or reason. I always do what my gut tells me when I'm landscaping. And then here you can see I've added some ivy to the interior wall and added a lovely little tree. But on this side of the build, I did want the landscaping to feel a little more manicured. So we actually ended up sinking some topiary bushes into the ground and extending their shape a little. So it just really added a nice kind of design-led architectural detail to the grounds. And we also had a couple of trees as well. Again, working with that mid-century modern notion of bringing the outdoors in. So you can see all this lovely landscaping from those floor to ceilings windows. And here's that succession of topiary bushes as well. I think it looked really nice, actually, because this plot is very unique in that it just hangs over the edge. So it's not many plots that are like this. So I did want to take advantage of those views. And yeah, just introducing all the landscaping that we've used at the front around this section for a bit of consistency. And just perfecting things as I see fit. Love this red tree. I thought it really played well with the bushes that we used at the front. And yeah, just added a nice pop of colour and a bit of contrast as well to the landscaping. We also switched over the garage from the side view to the front, which makes a little bit more sense since the main road was at the front of the build. But I do wonder if the Paralives teams are considering patching in cars. I'm not sure how that would work. I mean, it is kind of a open world, but I don't know if that would work functionally. But yeah, just skipping ahead really with the landscaping because I was doing more of the same thing and using all my landscaping tricks to make this look as lush and realistic as possible. And yeah, just carrying over a few things here. Found this lovely little drain grate, so made sure to include that. Now to the rear patio. I initially was going for this brown and black palette, but we ended up changing that. And we also changed this tiled coffee table. I don't know what I was thinking with that. I think in the right space it would work, but for here, just didn't look like it would fit into a mid-century modern interior or exterior in this case. And did definitely want to introduce a lot of plants in this area, so managed to include some big boy planters on this section for the patio. And yeah, just including a rear sliding door for access. And yeah, I'm still trying to familiarize myself with the catalog, so you'll see a lot of me searching around for things and experimenting with decorations. Also spent countless hours just recoloring things for the sake of it. There we are. We opted for this olive shade, which I think really worked perfectly for this space. And yeah, just reflected that with the outdoor table as well. I think everything looked very cohesive. I did a couple of statement plants and some big lighting and copied over the dining table actually and sunk that into the ground to act as a coffee table. Again, this is where the possibilities for creativity are endless with that advanced transform tool. So also thought it was quite a nice touch to add a mug as well as if one of the Paralives has come out and enjoyed this gorgeous view. But yeah, it's nice and simple, but very stylish. I actually really love the outdoor table, something I would love on my outdoor patio. I'm adding some mood lighting to the area, just sinking it into the growth. Also completely forgot about bins, so I actually ended up replacing the front plants that we had for 2 wheelie bins instead. One for recycling, another just for general waste. Kind of hidden those, tucked away between the landscaping. I also wanted to make more of a moment for the double-heighted wall, so we ended up introducing some columns, and I sank those into the patio just a touch, so the interior set felt a little less clunky. You can see here the effect it has, and I think it turned out quite nice actually, kind of just tucked within the landscape. But you can see that the shelf trick has not done me any favors because I had to go in and manually sink them all down along the edges. For the longest time, I thought that sliding door wasn't working, and then I realized I was using the non-glass version, so dipped out a touch. Finally into the interiors, so I worked on the ground floor plan away from camera because it was a bit of a minefield, but I wanted to create this connecting hallway to the bedrooms. You can see here I was slightly struggling with the room modifications, and ignore the stairs to the doomed 3rd floor, but on this level we have 3 fairly generous bedrooms and a main bedroom with a double-heighted atrium and a living area in the cantilever part of the build. So there's a very generous amount of living space, and I love what we did with the cantilever living space with the overhang. I think here I was kind of testing whether we could do a double-heighted atrium area, and we actually could do, so I was very happy about that. But before that I had to make sure I placed all the walls, otherwise the flooring would just entirely disappear. And I did think I managed to make the floor plan work once we got rid of the top floor, so I wasn't too upset. We kind of went back to front on the interiors, so we're starting off in the dining space. I chose a rock accent wall with a subtly textured wallpaper, and you can see here me doing the shelf trick on the half walls as well. These were actually a nightmare because they kept disappearing, so love that. Thank you very much to the Paralives team. No, I'm only kidding. I know it's still in early access, so any problems, I'm just making sure to register to the game devs, and hopefully that'll be fixed later on. But yeah, you can just see me here doing my little trick. I mean, it's actually kind of a well-known trick now. A lot of creators are doing this, and yeah, just makes the steps look so much better, so much cleaner. It can be kind of dangerous, this tool, actually, because could end up doing decorations for ages. I chose a 6-seater dining table, but I had to manually place the 6th seat, which was a little annoying. But we created this lovely dining space. I was really happy with how this room turned out, actually, and kind of tones of the room looked really in keeping with the exterior of the build. And we created this lovely buffet area. I'm using a very mid-century modern cabinet. Pretty much every piece of furniture in this build is a custom swatch. I can't get enough of the color wheel, really, and I also can't have myself spending hours just tweaking things, really. It's just in my nature. I also downloaded some artwork into my game, which I think really helped tie the space together, make it feel a lot more authentically mid-century modern. And I didn't mind the canvases that we had in the game, and now I've realized how to add frames that actually have a wooden trim to them, so it does look a bit better. But yeah, you can see here, I just really love the tones of this artwork. It really just helps, you know, brings the space to life. And just going through, oh yeah, just skipping ahead to more decorative ideas. 2 lovely lamps, gorgeous little vase. Just also placing an accent chair here. Wouldn't be really used for the dining table. I just thought it was nice for the space. We also add a hanging plant as well. You actually see a lot of plants throughout this build. Yeah, even in my own home, I love having plants. Really good for the environment, good for you, and good for the visual aesthetic of the rooms, if I do say so myself. I also love that you can actually recolor the archway frame. However, we ended up deleting that by the time the final tool came around due to some very annoying wall issues, which I did report. It's kind of frustrating because I did like how this looked, but actually in the final tour, I'm glad that we rectified it to create more of an open space with a few just kind of open half walls. So opting for a lovely mid-century modern rug in the tones of the artwork, and adding another lovely piece of art. This kind of abstract painting, those rich, muddy colors, which you often find in mid-century modern interiors. Adding custom width curtains, which are an absolute lifesaver, probably one of my favorite features in the game, funnily enough. I just love as well that, you don't have to troll through the catalog trying to find matching curtains to your windows. This just makes building so much easier and so much more intuitive. I actually couldn't really find an appropriate bar object, so we ended up creating one ourselves using some drawers and some items I found in the catalog. So some wine glasses and some low tumblers, I think. We actually come back to this because I found a row of bottles, so it looks a little bit crowded at the moment, but we do refine that a little later. Now for the kitchen, I actually love how retro these cabinets look in that teal shade. They definitely felt authentic to the mid-century modern period, and I was considering keeping them, but then I thought maybe of creating more of a neutral swatch to contrast with that rich wood tone, and yeah, did actually like how this looked as well. Felt a lot fresher actually, especially when combining it with those honeycomb tiles on the back wall and I think on the other rear wall as well. I really like how this kitchen came out actually. Create a little nook for a coffee station, some built-in cabinets. I've actually not really had much experience building kitchens in this game, but I do think it came together quite naturally. And we ended up using a custom range from Paratect on the Steam library. I just like the width of it. Felt a lot more established in a kitchen like this because some of the others, or also my big bugbear from my first speed build was that the oven kind of looks too tall for the cabinets. So this one looks a lot more seamless. And you can just see earlier I just found a bottle, that bottle decoration that I mentioned. So I just placed it on the bar, adding a HUD above the range. And yeah, I really enjoy those tiles actually. Something I quite like in my own kitchen. But yeah, as I mentioned, I'm going to be custom swatching every single object in this house, so it seems. There's a coffee station coming to life. Also had a lovely toaster. Here we are, just adding that detail there. Looks a lot better, I think. Little mini bar. And yeah, just adding decorations now to the kitchen area. I found placing the objects that I like to use first and then recoloring works for me. Otherwise, I can spend like 20 minutes recoloring a kettle, which isn't very good for gameplay and videos like this. But I did actually enjoy the amount of details, decorative details that we have in this game. Considering it's a base game and, they could have given us the bare minimum. Definitely enjoyed adding all the extra details to make this kitchen look a lot more realistic. And placing a fruit bowl. We also had a little herb pot on the counter coming up soon. And then here I was like, oh, actually let's use the mug that we've used on the outside for the interior to tie in the interiors for every room. And here is the herb pot, there we go. And that actually ended up inspiring me to create a wall shelf. So you can actually do this by adding a half wall off the grid and keep it quite flush to the exterior wall. And that way you can repaint it in any color you like. And then you add a shelf on the top so it's easier to add extra detailing. We introduce more herbs here, a lamp and some jars. And then I had an idea to extend a second shelf to create a kitchen bar situation with stools. I know the devs have said that they're working on patching in the usability of the stools, but for right now, they are just decorative. I do like the effect they have, and I love that really linear glass pane window, I think, just really helps invite the outdoors in. Adding more bottles. Apparently the parrots that live here love their alcohol. And some more plants as usual. I think here we're trying to look for a small lamp. It's more of a mood lamp, really. It's not really bringing light to the space. And as you can tell, I'm always building from different angles. So when I place something, I kind of look at it from far away, up close, just to make sure it works with the space. It's just how I build, weirdly. It's very detail driven. But I do really like how this breakfast bar came out, actually. Just cycling through some stools as well to find the one that's felt most appropriate for the interior aesthetic. And ended up opting for these kind of metal looking ones. But lovely. I actually really like this kitchen. And then just finish off the space with a big potted plant. I really like the look of these plants as well. And they did a great job with the graphics of the interiors. Now to the front entrance. So I actually ended up finding this lovely parquet wood flooring, and I chose the dark wood slats with a beige tone brick, which I did trial in the exterior, but I think the color didn't really create enough of a contrast, so I think it looked much better in the interiors, especially against that rich wood that we've got going on. You can see me there just kind of looking to see if it would work on the exterior, and it didn't look too bad, but I definitely prefer this lighter brick on the contrast. I struggled a lot with the split leveling of this room, which I did end up cutting from the video because it took me like 5 attempts to place a staircase, but I'm just concealing a few horrible errors of the split leveling with a rug, which is always the case in decorative games, and dressing up the front entrance with a side table with a lamp and a lovely plant and a huge great mirror. Kind of looks like a mirror you can find at IKEA, you know? But yeah, after many failed attempts, this is what I was greeted with when I loaded back in the game. I don't really know what I can say, but it was definitely entertaining. It was all for the aesthetics in the end, because we ended up creating this lovely split level staircase room with a bookshelf and some lovely artwork. I actually really like this small room, even though there's not much going on. I just like the differentiation between the levels and the light flooding in as well. And yeah, just add another big boy lamp here. Lovely stuff. And we also had a standing lamp in a olive shade, which is really gorgeous actually. It's quite an unusual shade to add in well, to kind of pick for an object like that, but I definitely want to be using swatches like that going forward, because it's a nice colourful accent but doesn't feel juvenile, you know? Like, this is such a nice olivey colour. So happy with how that turned out. And you can see we have a full width window, but we end up shortening that a little later on, just so it made sense with the staircase, so it wasn't kind of cutting in. And adding some lightings as well. So the front entrance had a quite generous area to work with, so we made a mini seating area. And when I discovered the smoke alarm in the catalogue, I also discovered that the stove was missing, but we ignore that for now. So I initially wanted to create an inbuilt shelf using the shelves that we have in the catalogue, but I ended up integrating those with a modern fireplace. And I think it turned out quite nicely actually, and definitely authentic to a mid-century modern interior. I'm kind of glad as well that we did integrate a fireplace on this wall to add a bit of detail, you know. More details the merrier. We introduced a rug to the space. I think one thing I will say about recoloring rugs is that the blue overlay makes it very hard to see which colors you're choosing from. So I'd like to see that updated in the future. But yeah, this kind of unused space became something beautiful in the end. And we bring in even more artwork and tchotchkes to the area to make it feel very lived in. I think that's what I was going for. Design-led, but comfortable. And I think for what would be a fairly unused space, turned out to be quite a nice, comfortable third living room, I guess you could say. Just using a drop pendant light there. Love that little blue marker to tell where you're placing it on the floor as well. And introducing even more artwork in here. I'm really glad I spent the time just looking for artwork and implementing in the game, because it definitely added another layer of realism to this house. Now, this partition wall created the perfect cozy nook for a home office. I did skip ahead to more of less its final state, but I love the use of this space. I think even added a Rubik's Cube for a bit of fun. And yeah, we're kind of short on desks in this catalogue, but I did think this worked perfectly for a mid-century modern style house. I did a bookshelf as well, and a desktop lamp. A desktop computer with a lamp. Just enough storage to make it not feel too cluttered. And we also add some artwork facing the desk chair, but it's where I realized I needed even more artwork in the game, particularly for a house that is going to be covered with canvases. So made sure to delve more on the internet to find some that worked for the space. I'm not sure how this will work when you download it off the Steam Workshop, whether it'll just replace with the stock imagery in the game. I imagine that's more or less what will probably happen. Now, the ground level living space, I drew inspiration from the Farnley Hay house itself for this wall shelf situation, and it allowed me to create some custom leaning pieces of art, which I definitely want to bring with me for other builds. I think even just tweaking the advanced transform tool objects with it and just creating some kind of custom elevation really adds a lot of personality to builds. And yeah, there's so much you can do with it. Even here, just being able to snugly nestle in the pillar, so it felt like built in with the build itself. And you can see here for, I don't know what is now, the 100th time me adding the custom shelf on top of the half wall. But just cycling through some of the artwork. Love actually bringing the tones of the furniture in with the artwork as well, so everything felt very cohesive. But I think, yeah, I love this leaning wall shelf situation. I also love that sofa as well. It's very deep, very comfortable. And just adding some flowers to the space. I think I reflected the same ones that we had on the outdoor table as well. Creating a TV moment. We end up shifting that cabinet over for a fireplace and using the transform tool to make it look like it's built in. Kind of always visualize that a lot when I come across mid-century modern homes, how everything feels very intentional but built in, very organic with the space. So I definitely wanted to reflect that here and, you know, not actually have the sole focus of the room being the television itself. So we used the same fireplace that we included in the front entrance and recolored it, adding a snazzy designer armchair. And I also added another custom shelf to it with the transform tool. I hope that doesn't interfere with the Paris sitting down. But I think it should be all right, you know, because it's nestled over to that side on the left side of the armchair. So there should be more than enough space for a Para to sit down. And I think it turned out rather lovely because I wanted to add more plants in the area. And that just gave me an excuse to add yet another one. I've also noticed that when you size up coffee tables, they do get hilariously tall. So I ended up sinking this one into the floor instead. You can see that it's just a little bit too big. So just creating a custom height for myself. Again, I hope it's usable, but then even the things that are on the coffee table are just decorative anyway, so it doesn't really matter, to be honest. And I ended up creating a pedestal moment for another potted plant and just creating different aspects of focal points for the room. I think this looks really nice, actually. Something I want to definitely introduce for some more modern builds as well. Introducing a vinyl player and speakers felt very appropriate for a mid-century modern home. And in doing so, I also came across a smartphone in the catalog which we placed in the entranceway. But I love that little like Sonos style speaker. So I've placed that below the television as well. And yeah, just cycling through some decorative objects for the coffee table. Ended up coming across a few books, so made sure to include those, and adding another rug to the space just to settle in the furniture. And also another sideboard so I could add even more detailing to the room. Just trying to find as many appropriate tchotchkes as possible without making it feel too overcluttered. And we add, yeah, I love this little wall light on here. I actually used this for my first speed build, but we did it in a different shade here. And yeah, it just looks so lovely. It's like that bridge between contemporary and retro. And just deepening down this armchair for a slightly more richer mahogany shade. And there's that lovely canvas of a greyhound, which I downloaded online. Now to the downstairs bathroom / laundry room. When I realized we had washer dryers in the game, I ended up reorientating the space to accommodate. And I think it kind of works out. It looks a little bit cramped, but I think, you know, for what would be a usable space, kind of a 2 hybrid space, it works. It does the job, you know. And I also added some hooks to the wall. In doing so, I created an automatic washing line. I did not realize that was part of the game dynamics. So, but for now, it's just decorative. They're not technically going to be a washing line, but it's quite a nifty addition to the game. And then upstairs, we are dressing up this corridor. So connecting the bedrooms to the hallway. We ended up creating this full-walled library and cozy reading nook. I imagine this space as a row of skylights, which I actually kind of, thinking now in reflection, added onto this build, but I'll save that maybe for another future build because I'd spent so long customizing the roof that, yeah, that would have been a nightmare trying to implement it. But hopefully the devs actually add skylights to the game to make it easier for all of us. And just creating a little custom lighting situation. Ended up sinking a floor lamp into the coffee table, adding a little circular rug as well. Such a lovely little space because it was for what otherwise is quite used corridor, you know. Love that plant as well. Need to brush up on my lingo for plants because I'm unsure what type of plant that is. Adding another lovely artwork here and a side table. I think I just copied the one over from the front entrance. I did like the first one we have, but when you extend it, it creates so many drawers, it almost looks ridiculous. So I ended up going for this double drawer moment instead. And you'll see lots of just random bowl decorative items and plants, anything to fill the space. So the first of the bedrooms, and yes, I remember to extend the bed to a double. Throughout each of the bedrooms, we create this custom built-in shelving. And for this space, we opt for a light palette. I came across this lovely artwork actually, which we place above the bed very soon. And that inspired me to change up the color palette and the floor color, which you'll see shortly. Really helps bring a more authentic mid-century modern feel to the space. So I was kind of happy with the beige color of the flooring, but I do think that mahogany color brought it to life. And yeah, here's where I was like, oh, actually, the color of these walls actually unintentionally matches the picture. So why don't we try and reflect that on the flooring as well? And then, yeah, you can see here I'm just introducing some red tones to the room so it doesn't look completely random. And I do think it just brings kind of an authenticity to the room instead of it making it look so new build, I guess. I always associate light palettes with newer builds. Kind of looks a little bit cramped here, so I was just trying to figure out where to put a mirror. In the end, we put it next to the wardrobe. This circular moment. I think it's like quite a lovely space, actually. Here we are, the piece de resistance. The burgundy carpet. I actually was even cycling through the blue, but yeah, this turned out lovely. This bathroom also turned out very nicely, if I do say so myself. I love these olive tiles with the contrasting white tile floor. And we used that half wall trick to create some shelving space for plants and products and cabinetry above. We had a tricky window in this space. It's kind of sat across the floor itself, which doesn't really work for a bathroom. So we ended up placing a freestanding bath there just to conceal the para's modesty when they're in the bathroom. And creating yet another custom walk-in shower with the a tall wall and a window for glass pane. I've actually seen another trick to make it look more seamless. So going forward, going to follow that suit. So you can just extend the window high above to conceal that ugly tall part, white part at the top of the wall. Adding lots of plants as well, as is the case with my builds. And lots of storage. It's kind of a dream bathroom here for product lovers. And we create this custom sink area. I actually really enjoy how this space worked out because we ended up using a marbled basin in this lovely kind of reflective brown shade. I think it just looked really nice in contrast against those olivey tones in the bathroom. It's a shame I couldn't recolor the the cabinet work surface to a matching shade, but hopefully that will be patched in because as of right now, some of these objects are fairly standard. Now, we've moved on to probably my favorite bedroom of the build. I absolutely love the colors of this room, and that teal shade against the wood tones is so nice. Something I would have in my space. Also obsessed with the custom bedding, the fact that we can introduce our own artwork as well. Yeah, the room really came nicely together, to be honest. I even love what we did to the lamps there, but we're just kind of reflecting the artwork into the space. Ended up finding this portrait on my inspiration hunt, and so it worked really nicely in this area. I did a lovely pile of books and even I did an alarm clock as well. Found this lovely vase as well, which we placed on the dresser. And I ended up going for a custom lamp here. It was a standing floor lamp, so just risen it with the advanced transform tool, shrunk it down. It really fit the space. I think I'm trying to be as resourceful as possible when there's not that many objects in certain categories of the build mode, so just didn't want to get bored with using the same objects over and over again. We had a lovely striped rug in this deep brown shade and a fancy bench as well at the end of the bed in the tones of the room. I actually love how much of the effect the textile swatches have on items as well. It really does create a brand new object if you're doing something in like faux fur or suede or leather. But yeah, I say it's kind of a neutral room as well. Like, you know, a male para, a female para, a non-binary para, couple para. Anyone could live in this room. And I like that window overlooking the tree from the front entrance as well. But it's got a very desirable walk-in wardrobe as well, this room, which is what a dream that would be. So the para that actually lives in this room, I'm going to say this is like the primary suite, considering it's got the walk-in wardrobe. It doesn't have an ensuite, but it's just the way the floor plan works. Just skipping ahead to adding some detail, but made sure to include a suitcase and some piles of clothes and some shoes. And also opted for a bit of a jazzier modern mirror, actually. So quite modern and funky. And worked with the space. But did it in that brown tone, so it kind of blended in. And the final bedroom of the build. So I need to go for quite a deep and rich colour palette. So we opted for this burgundy and dark wood paneling moment. I guess each bedroom itself has its own personality, and this one definitely feels the most dramatic of all of them. But it came together again quite nicely. I love the lighting engine in this game actually, which proved lovely for the final screenshots. But I definitely think this one felt the most sophisticated, most grown up. And all the rooms have lovely artwork in them. I love that little canvas, that green canvas there, just worked in harmony with the bedding. Kind of wish I added more orange accents in there to coincide with the artwork. And using that trick with the inbuilt shelving for the bed head. Also flipped a shelf on its side to create a custom headboard for the bed and added a wood tone. And a custom sized bench at the end of the bed, as all fancy bedrooms have. And the finishing touches with a pair of curtains, well, with some curtains. Now we are in the cantilever section, so probably one of my favorite rooms in the house. We added a accent chair near the end of the room, and then this conversation space with this gorgeous piece of artwork. So the artwork itself really influenced the tones of the interiors, and I think it just worked so lovely together. I just wanted to bring up the parquet flooring from the ground floor to contrast with all this dark wood that we've got going on. And yeah, just the amount of windows to this space would be so lovely to see throughout the seasons. Here's that artwork. Love it. That nice, like, rich contrast to that beige tiled stone wall. And finally got around to using that end table. Considering I only left it to 2 drawers wide, it didn't look silly. Another vinyl player. Imagine the Paras in this house love listening to a bit of jazz music. And yeah, I was just figuring out what to do on the back wall as well. So I ended up creating another sideboard moment. I think I even add some bottles to it as well, so it acts as a bar. And yeah, I was considering using a different rug, but in the end we are going for the same one that we've used at the front entrance. I think I just switched up the swatches, which, as I mentioned, is kind of tricky to do when you've got that blue overlay. Can't really tell what I'm doing. And this is where I was like, eureka moment. Figuring out how to add the color swatches to the ceiling. So made sure to go around most of the build. Some of it was glitching out a little bit, so you can't come for me. But I did think it looked really nice in the end. I will say some of the ceilings actually didn't want to cooperate. Sometimes it's just, with the way the nature of the floor plan works, it just didn't work as seamlessly as I would have liked. Wanted to include this ultra sped up part showcasing my complete Vanessa meltdown of a 3rd floor not working. The roof basically refused to attach, so in the end I completely demolished everything and opted for a flush roof instead. But yes, devs, please patch something in for the next time, because I spent many an hour trying to make that work. And the final room of the build, this garage just contains a lot of storage, tools, and some workout equipment. But I'm going to leave things here. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and leave me a lovely comment down below. And I'll upload this build to the Steam Workshop and leave a link in the description box below should you wish to download it. Plus, you can also search my name, Curiopher, on YouTube for other cozy building games. And I'll see you in the next one. Now for the final tour.